Hi, listeners. Welcome back to Surround Sound. I'm your host, Matthew Tung. Today, we'll be talking about a very interesting and also probably a topic that everybody probably someone knows about. We're going to be talking about the a cappella. I'm going to be your host today. Instead of me talking previously, it'll be my co-host talking today. Michelle, how are you doing?
Hey Matthew, I'm doing great. And you?
I'm doing well, finally. so, um, Today we're going to be talking about a cappella. For those of you who don't know, Michelle has been in an a cappella group ever since high school, and I've probably witnessed this firsthand because we've been in the same school during high school. The thing about me is that I have probably like a wide variety of experience as it pertains to a cappella, such as Glee, Pitch Perfect, to pentatonics. For those who are not familiar with what a quote unquote a real a cappella is, Michelle, could you describe to us what that is?
Yeah, so there's actually kind of two different, I want to say types, but like groups of a cappella groups. So one could be like pentatonics, where it's a smaller group or ensemble, and it's made up of the four different voice parts, so soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. Or it could be like a larger collegiate a cappella group with the same amount of same sections, but just with more people per section. And simply put, an a cappella group is just a bunch of people singing without any sort of musical instrument accompaniment. So it's really like dutes, ahs, and you also have a VP, vocal percussion that does the boots and cats. And it's interesting because in high school I was first exposed to it when I was invited by a friend's sister who wanted me to join the a cappella group. And I've actually never had any choir experience, so I'd say that a cappella is entirely different than choir. Like one cannot equate those two together.
Yeah,
But having,
go ahead.
yeah, no, but I was just gonna say, like, having choir experience does help, but they're nowhere near each other in terms of like the genre and how the whole group works.
So you talked about two different groups. What is the second group that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, type. So I guess what I was referring to is just in terms of group size. So pentatonics would be, penta, so five people per group, whereas other ensembles like collegiate a cappellas, which I'm actually in two groups right now, are larger groups consisting of around 20 people or less.
Well,
And some of them do go to like the competition ICCAs in the Pitch Perfect movie.
uh, okay, so there are two different types of group, and specifically as it comes to sound or as it comes to just the general musical differences. Could you explain to our listeners here what are the major differences as it pertains to the size of the ensemble?
I guess it all depends on how an arranger like wants their singers to be, because normally when you're arranging music for a larger group, you would take into account how it would sound as a larger group and whether or not people would blend together. And of course, it's easier to coordinate the different sounds when you have a smaller group. So for instance, when I was in an ICCA's group, I started making smaller covers with other people in the same group. And that was something similar to pentatonics. And we didn't write out like a whole arrangement. We just kind of came up with things on the spot. So logistically, that was a bit easier to coordinate. And with a larger ensemble, you normally have a musical director to conduct their weekly rehearsals and whatnot. So I guess there's also flexibility between the two different group sizes.
Yeah, speaking of flexibility, I know that like because I've been in bigger ensembles and also smaller ensembles, especially chamber ones. But could you kind of explain to us how do you get the group members together? Because I suppose like do you just like because I know pentatonics how they form together was just like these group of people who just met online, one being Yale, the others being in music school, I suppose. And then they just kind of form this group together, whereas others go through like a very formal process, like probably a bigger a cappella group will go through auditions and all that. So could you kind of explain to us like this entire process of How are these members put together?
Yeah, so I'll just briefly give you a crash course of my a cappella club at UBC. Yeah, so I think we operate a little bit differently than US schools because we as a club, we have a couple of groups inside of the club, and to audition for each individual group, you have to go through the club general process first. Whereas in the US, a lot of the groups operate independently and you just audition directly with the group. That is a major difference. There are two rounds basically. First round, you do kind of like a solo audition where you can showcase, your individual skills, and we also test you on, all the basic musical technicalities like sight reading, or can you differentiate a note from another. So after you pass that round, the second round is where you sing in a group. So you sing in a chorus and we give you the piece of music ahead of time. And you have to sing in front of the whole club, basically, because that's when all the members from different groups are going to listen to each individual and to pick whoever they think will fit their own group. And it's kind of interesting because I didn't know this process or how this all worked until maybe a few months into my first year. And it's a little bit like picking a fraternity and a sorority in that the audition, yeah, because the auditionee will have their preferences for the groups, and also the groups will also kind of have an idea of how the individual auditionees are like. So it's kind of like a matchmaking process.
I mean, based on what you're saying, it's basically Tinder but different. Like if you swipe right, it'll be like I don't like this person. Swipe left. Is it the other? Oh, swipe left will be like I like this person. Oh wait, so swipe left will be I don't like this person. Anyways, now listeners know that I don't use Tinder. But here's the thing, right? I think you really talked about this whole concept of blending, and this is a really important part. So tell us how important is this whole blending thing? Because I think what you're trying to talk here, as group members are trying to choose choose which individual members they want to accept. It's really about the concept of blending. Tell us how important this blending concept is.
Yeah, it's actually very interesting because in the audition process, you can just kind of differentiate if that person is a huge soloist or a big choral person that can, blend to other people. So I think that's one of the biggest factors that we look for in a person, whether or not you can solo, but also blend to other people. And yeah, so a couple things on our criteria is, of course, pitch. You don't have to have relative pitch or perfect pitch as long as you can kind of read a sheet of music and discern pitch relative to other people, and not sing out of tune. That's what we look for basically. But and each group has their own distinctive not voice necessarily, but genre or the types of songs they sing. In that sense, blending as a choral in general is very important. And it's interesting because in the audition process, we also kind of interact with the auditionees. So we want to get to know you as well and how your personality is like. It's not just if you sing well or not, because we would rather pick someone who is hardworking but not super musically trained versus someone who is super musically talented but very cocky and doesn't put in the work at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I suppose this is more like a management thing. The thing is that how does a group, I suppose, balance between individual standing out, because you don't want to suppress the quality of a specific quality that a specific individual portrays in his or her vocal, and how do you kind of balance that with one person trying to blend in and not stand out within the group?
That's actually it's very difficult because the group itself and the members change every year. So you kind of have to adapt to a new voice each year. So what we try to do is right in the beginning of the year, we do warm-ups just so everyone can get used to not just the beginning of the year. I mean, every rehearsal we do warm-ups, And musical directors aren't really professionals. We're all students. So I just look on YouTube and see what the best vocal exercises are. And we just kind of do like vowel exercises or breathing exercises. And it's not like you can go to each individual and be like, you're sounding a little bit sharp, or like, you don't sound good this time. Can you like tone it down or like sing quieter? Like you can't do that, right? What you want to do is just try to make everyone sound not unique, but like to blend to each other as much as possible.
Yes, I think a lot of musicians who are listening to this podcast would always understand in an ensemble, one of the hardest part is blending in, right? I think a lot of the things that Michelle is talking about here is trying to make a group kind of fit together and harmonize together, be in harmony. And I know that we were talking more about the mechanics of how a rehearsal is run and also how we begin to form a group. I want to kind of go into about other things, like other more logistic things. So in our notes, I think there's one part that you really want to talk about. It's the one is how do you plan out your shows? And number two, we also want to talk about the logistic part, because oftentimes a cappella don't have like a specific choir. You just have notes written for you. Usually it takes a lot of arrangements. So could you speak to us how you usually plan out the entire show, being a director, and how do you plan out these arrangements? Because I suppose a lot of our listeners are really interested into how you arrange these music.
Yeah. When you said show, I was like, what kind of show? Oh, you mean rehearsals?
Well, I mean, show as in like you going into a concert, or you going into, just a show, put on a show.
Yeah, yeah. I guess in the very early stages of learning music, we tend to split up. So to speed up the process a little bit. So what I mean is sectionals, like in orchestra, similarly, you kind of focus on learning the notes itself. We don't really focus on the musicality or the expressiveness yet. So that's the first stage. And then the second stage would be coming back together. And I'm very grateful that my members are able to sight read pretty easily. So a lot of the times, like if we just, grind through a piece of music, we just keep going and sight reading slowly instead of learning it bar by bar. But sometimes as a musical director, before I split them into sectionals, I kind of just play the notes on the piano first for each section, a couple bars, and then I would do that for each section. And then once we're done with, say, section A, we do it with the whole group to see how it sounds initially, and then I break them out into sectionals, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's sort of like a divide and conquer kind of concept.
Yeah, yeah. And in terms of, I think you also asked about arrangements.
Yes, I
right?
did. I know that for a lot of a cappella groups, you guys don't really have a music outright, right? It takes a lot of arrangements because it also depends on how you fit the group, what pitch works for the group, and a lot of there's just a lot of adjustments to be made. So what are the things you're looking for, and what are the things you're looking for when you're trying to look for an arrangement, or on another hand, you have to completely like break it apart and just start from the beginning. So what is this? Basically, what my question is, how does this entire arrangement process work?
Yeah, I actually think that my musical theory and training from a very young age helped a lot because nobody really taught me how to arrange a cappella music. So I just kind of listened to a piece of music and then jot it down into the software called MuseScore. And normally for the general group, so yeah, at UBC a cappella, there's kind of two types of groups. One is a general, interest-based group, and the other would be the competitive groups that goes into the ICCAs. And yeah, I don't think I explained this, but I'm the musical director of a general group called the Unaccompanied Minors. And when I'm arranging for general groups, I kind of emulate the original song. And I don't change a lot of things because then it'll get a bit complicated. Whereas for an ICCA group, I mean, I don't arrange them, but they normally involve a lot more technicality and depth, and there's usually like an overarching theme, and a lot of times it's completely different to the original. So for me, I guess starting out an arrangement is quite easy because first, okay, I want this to be in the same key as the original. So then I kind of write the bass line first and the solo line. So these are the two, sandwich that I start out with. And then I fill in the like ham and cheese and lettuce, which are the voice parts. Yeah, and as for like the do's and ahs and stuff, I try to, it's not like I'm copying the original, but it's just easier for me that way. And it's the quickest way to kind of make an arrangement. I know this doesn't sound as creative or anything, but like for me personally, making any song sound a cappella in itself is already kind of cool. Like my first arrangement was, I don't know if you know the song Slide by Calvin Harris. That's a very funky song in itself, and the bass line is already fun. So I didn't add a lot of elements to it, and I tried to stick to the song as much as possible.
Yeah, for listeners who don't know, what she's really explained is basically the general outlook of how one would write when it comes to four-part writing, and then how about the because you also talk about the percussion part. Then how does the percussion come in? Does the percussion come in as a more improvisatory role, or is it more like there's a set type of rhythm that you want the beatboxer? I mean, he or she is really a beatboxer to kind of beat throughout the entire music, or is it a mix of both?
Yeah, I definitely don't write in the VP music, so it's for sure it's improv. And a lot of times we decide who's going to be the VP a few rehearsals in, because a lot of our singers are, most of our VPs are also singers in the group. So we kind of just choose based on that. Normally, I try to have one section that sounds a little bit different than the original, just so it's not super boring and to give, a little bit of surprises to the audience. I do that either by, including a rap and then just breaking it down into, like, instead of being a continuous, I kind of like chop it down into like, maybe no VP for the section when there was drums in the original, like that kind of different. I mean, I'm not a super advanced arranger, but I can tell you that I arrange music quite quickly, but I'm also very indecisive as to what I want to include, because I just always feel like, it's not the final piece yet. It's not perfect yet. No, this can't go out yet, So it's a fairly long process. Yeah, my first arrangement took me a whole summer.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of trial and error, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And you don't know if you want a key change, and you have to like change all the notes. I mean, that's easy with MuseScore, but that's generally how arranging goes.
Oof. I mean, that sounds really tough already. So for listeners, we're going to take a 5-minute break from here, and then we'll come back with even more content about a cappella. So we were just kind of talking about how you kind of arrange these music. So after our little break, you kind of talked about how you said, quote, you cheated a little on how you arrange these music. So tell us a little bit about that quote unquote cheating process that you kind of went off tangent a little that period when you were talking about it.
Okay, I mean, I call it cheating, but it's really just some form of assistance. You have to start somewhere. No one starts arranging from scratch. You got so I guess one form of cheating would be just looking at ultimateguitar.com for the chords. The other, no, seriously, it's really helpful. And the other would be looking up a YouTube tutorial for a piano cover. And normally they have all like the staves and the sheet music right in front of you. So that really helps, especially for songs that have more complicated chords or jazzy chords. Um, yeah. So I guess it is kind of like a form of cheating, but it gets you going.
No, I don't think it is because the more complicated chords are they're so difficult for the ears to discern, right? So no, it's definitely not cheating.
Yeah. Thank you.
No, I would definitely agree with you. So yeah, I think one of our biggest question about this whole entire process is how what how do you come up with an inspiration? See, inspiration is such a tough word because it's arrangement. One would not relate to inspiration as it pertains to arrangement, but how are you inspired to make different types of sound when you're trying to arrange? Because I know you also talked about like the simplicity of how you just wanted to sometimes just making oohs and ahs, and sometimes that already in itself is very effective. But how are you inspired to do more different things when you're doing, I don't know, a more I guess different arrangement?
Yeah, I think that all boils down to why an arranger wants to arrange in the first place. So for me, a lot of times it's because I listen to an awesome song and then the arrangement comes second. But there could also be circumstances where, that's a case with a lot of ICCAs where you have a theme in mind and then you pick a song to arrange. Those are two different things. So for me, for the general group, it's more of the first reason. So for Slide, for instance, I was like, okay, the song is hella cool. And in my mind, I already kind of have a general framework of how I want the song to sound, even though I'm going to emulate it as much as possible. And I kid you not, my inspirations literally come from the shower. So if you force me to write an arrangement in one night, like cram it in one night, I cannot because inspirations come pretty slowly for me. Like one day in the shower, I'll think of this crazy part for this one section. And then maybe a week later in the shower, I think of, ooh, another crazy idea. So it just kind of comes to me whenever. That's why it takes me quite a while to write an arrangement. I sometimes use voice memos to keep track of what I have in mind because it's hard to convert your brain to, I don't know, a sheet of paper, right? And when it comes to music, especially. So that's what I do. Um, yeah, so inspiration comes from the shower, and I normally need to have some sort of direction for where I want to go before I start arranging.
Yes. I would say the shower room would probably be the best environment for an inspirational call. I mean, that's the shower room is where I come up with a lot of music, so I could definitely agree, at least to that degree.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
and I'm sure a lot of musicians out there will agree.
yes. So another thing I think in our notes that you really wanted to talk about is we previously talked about matching tones, but you also wanted to specify a little bit this concept of perfect pitch and relative pitch and how this affects the overall rehearsal. So could you kind of explain to us how that entire process works or how that technique affects how you rehearse?
Yeah, a lot of members in the club have relative pitch. There's only a very few number of people who have perfect pitch. And I'm
Mhm.
actually very surprised that a lot of people come to a cappella, to university, to have a very solid understanding of discerning pitch and reading music. And they're actually able to, I give you one note and they read the sheet music and they're just able to sing accordingly. But then for me, I can't do that because, I mean, not to be like cocky or anything, but I have perfect pitch and I've always just looked at the sheet of music like note by note, as if the
Mhm.
notes aren't connected to each other, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I definitely understand that because for most violinists like me, we are also we rely on our perfect pitch a lot, and singing to us is very difficult, especially if you give us like a different key and then you want us to sing like one semitone or one tone down. All of a sudden, our entire head is messed up because we're not seeing what we should be hearing, and we're just
Yeah.
confused. And that's kind of like the magic, how the magic of relative pitch. For listeners who don't know what perfect pitch is just basically if I sing out a note or if I just click on a note, one could discern a specific pitch right away. So it's usually it can be a disadvantage. Sometimes it can be advantage. It's not a complete advantage, as some might think. So moving on, I think a big chunk of our notes, you really wanted to talk about the ICCA competition. You wrote a lot about your experience in the a cappella competition here. So for those who don't know, Michelle is formerly a musical director of a general ACA group while simultaneously being a part of an ICCA group at UBC. So speaking of understanding how to run a show, we're speaking to one, like literally right here. So explain to us how this entire competition goes in the collegiate level.
I know this podcast doesn't have video, but the entire time Matthew was saying this, I was literally face palming the entire time. Anyway.
This is no flattery. This is actually the truth, We're just spitting out.
That is true.
So let me shower you with praise, Michelle.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you. I appreciate it. In my second year of university, I wouldn't say I was dumb, but like I had a lot on my plate in second year, being the musical director and a part of the ICCA group called A Cappella. It's like Cappella, because Canadians say A a lot. So a lot of a cappella names are really punny. You got like Nor'easters or like SoCal Vocals. Those kind of names, and pentatonics. I mean, that itself is also funny. So yeah, being the musical director of the unaccompanied minors, that was like 2.5 hours on a Monday. And then I would rehearse a cappella 3 hours on a Friday and 3 hours on Sunday. That was quite a bit for me. And I guess my perception of a cappella since high school has always been an ICCA group, because a lot of my early exposures were like the Nor'easters from Northeastern University, and just watching their performance of, with the whole choreography and a 12-minute set, that was what my image of a cappella was. So I'm really happy that I got the chance to be a part of a competitive group in my second year. And basically how the ICCA goes is that you have a 12-minute set of your group, and you have to implement some sort of choreography into it. And added to that, you kind of need to have like a narration coming out of your set. Another part you have to consider is the outfit of the entire group. So these are the main things you have to kind of consider. And I kid you not, oh my God, at the audition for a cappella, so this is different. For the competitive groups, we auditioned directly with them. First part was the singing, and the second one was they gave you a piece of music and then to learn the choreo on the spot at the audition. And like I actually like effing died, okay? Like it was like being in a K-pop group. I've never danced in my entire freaking life, like ever, okay? And imagine like you had to memorize a piece of music that was given to you 2 days before, okay? And you're like panting and sweating and trying to learn the choreo. So that's the kind of like training they put you through first to make you prepared for what's to come. Yeah, and it was interesting because for the competitive group, it was made up of mainly soloists. And then for my general, a lot of people with choral background. So that was one of like the kind of main differences. And how the group worked, of course, it was interesting because I was in a competitive group, but I was also a leader in another group. But I could obviously tell that, in the competitive group, things are a lot more in line with the timeline, and everything is just more hardcore, and I wouldn't say like legit, but like we try to be more committed and all of us came into this group not knowing each other before. So in the first few weeks, it was a bit hard to find the bond because without that, then it's hard to make music together.
Mhm.
Um,
I was really surprised at why would you guys so this is literally Glee on steroids. You guys not only had to choreograph and also sing at the same time for 12 straight minutes. I mean, listeners, that's incredibly difficult. You guys also have to like freaking sight read one. I never knew about this. How tough was it?
yeah, in addition to like sight reading, I was going to mention as part of our training, we also did workout sessions sometimes just to train our endurance and whether or not we would pant too much into the mic. Because, like, I wasn't the fittest person out there, but we had to train that.
Wait, so what do they do when they okay, one part being like the panting part, but what do they do to you when you're made to sight read? Sight read, for listeners who don't know what sight read is, it's literally you're given a music and then you just have to sing it on the spot. And usually that music is like you probably have never heard it or you probably have never sung it before. It's either or. Um, for probably the professionals, they probably have sung it, but for the more amateur ones, it's a lot more difficult. So what do they make you do? They just give you like, oh, you're gonna go sing, I don't know, let's suppose Ariana Grande's Dangerous Woman, and let's see if you can pull it off. So, or is it something more, I don't know, more intricate or more processed than just something that's so spontaneous? Could you like kind of enlighten us a little? Because I'm really curious about this.
You mean for the audition process of the ICCA group?
No, I think there was one part where you talked about there's the one sight reading part where you were just given a music and then you were supposed to sing it on the spot. Is it that's the audition process? Yeah, it is. It is the audition process.
Yeah, that's the audition process. No, they don't give you on the spot, but they send it to you like maybe 2, 3 days ahead of the audition date, like the second round.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, you have to like actually learn it. So if you have difficulty learning music, it would be hard. And also you have to try and memorize it before you get to the second round of auditions because you're about to learn the choreo, right? But I mean, the musical directors were really nice. They try to um, refresh your memory on it as a whole for like the first maybe a quarter part of the audition. So that's nice.
Oh wow, I never thought it would be that difficult. So for one thing, what does ICCA stand for?
Good question, Matthew. Yeah, thank you. I don't think I explained that. ICCAs stand for what's it? International Competition of Collegiate A Cappella. And this is actually one of the several competitions that the a cappella organization Varsity Vocals has. They also have ICHSA, which is International Competition of High School a cappella. So that's pretty cool. And all of these are from the US, but I think the ICCAs also happen in the UK. So the first round, so there's 3 rounds, right? Quarterfinals, semifinals, and then the finals. Finals is in New York City, and I think the division in the UK also goes to New York City for the finals.
Ooh, wow. So one question: what would be your least favorite team that like you just absolutely hate that team, as it pertains to like which a cappella group or which school you just don't want to see them win no matter what? Or do you want to, or instead of talking something more hateful, would you want to talk about your favorite group?
Yeah, I'm not such a negative person, Matthew. So I think, yeah, I'll give my favorites because yeah, I remember going to my first ever competition and just hearing other groups live. It was so cool. Like I didn't hate any group. I was just in awe of all the groups that were performing live because like think about a whole theater with on the stage there's at least 10 to 15 performers all individually mic'd, right? And
Mhm.
that's just and you hear like at least 10 groups performing all of this in one night, so that's really cool. My favorite group, I'd have to say that it's either I can't choose between I don't want to say basic here, but Nor'easters or USC's SoCal vocals.
Mhm.
Um,
What
yeah,
makes
because Nor'easters are kind of like classy, and all of their arrangements are just super cool, you know, and they've won a couple of ICCAs as well. And SoCal Volcals, they're like big West Coast energy vibe, and they're kind of carefree, and that kind of shows in their arrangements as well. I remember in high school, I was listening to SoCal Volcals cover of it was a mashup of Paper Hearts by Tori Kelly and Lay Me Down by Sam Smith. And I literally like I'm not kidding. Like I wrote down in MuseScore and I tried to make an arrangement of an a cappella arrangement, if you know what I mean.
Whoa, like on the spot, or
Not on the spot, but I did it in MuseScore and I tried to make my group perform it at Relay for Life, like a smaller event. So instead of a school-wide assembly, but that didn't like turn out too well because it was very difficult. But that got me so excited into the whole like a cappella scene.
this is another demonstration of how Michelle Law is our Mozart here, just pulling out stuff on the spot.
No, but like I just remembered, yeah, because that was well, yeah, when you asked me my favorite group, I totally forgot that I tried to emulate their arrangement for my own group.
And what would be your favorite a cappella group, as it pertains to professional musicians, like the artists out there who are making a living out of this? Who's your favorite group?
You know, it's interesting. There are only very few a cappella groups who are able to kind of like sustain professionally because a lot of this grows out of collegiate a cappella. But have you heard of Citizen Queens?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't. So,
They're yeah, they're kind of like the girl version, all girl version of Pentatonics, and they're
oh,
amazing. Yeah, most of them go to schools in on the West Coast. I think some of them were members of SoCal Vocals, and they're doing amazing. Like, and I think they went on tour with Pentatonics a while ago.
wow.
You should check them out. Yeah, they're amazing.
It's on my list now. Is there anything that you want to add before we go into music of the week?
Well, no, I don't think so. I think I've kind of said quite a bit. Oh yeah, I wanted to mention, it was kind of sad for my group this year, for A Cappella this year or last year. Well, I actually wasn't a part of them last year, but they got they got first place at the semi quarterfinals, but which is really exciting because normally we get second place or you know not even placing a few years back, and because of COVID the whole competition got canceled and they didn't even move it online. Or
Oh,
did they move it online? No,
probably.
I don't think they did. Yeah,
So,
or
well,
else like a video submission would have been kind of rigged, but yeah.
yeah.
But this year, yeah, this year they're making it a 4 minute competition set, and they're gonna grade you more on your creativity of your arrangement rather than like your pitch or your musicality, that kind of stuff, because you can tweak it post production, right?
Yeah, for sure. So let's move on to I actually like the COVID part of it that you talked about because it actually affected a lot of musicians. We are going to move on into the music of the week. So, what is one music that you want to talk about? What you're looking into for this week, Michelle?
Wow, has it already been a week? Wow.
Yeah,
um
it has been.
Yeah, this is done unintentionally, but whatever podcast theme we're doing, it just coincides with my music of the week. So actually, just a few days ago, A Cappella released their EP for last year's set. So there's 3 songs that are out on Spotify actually, and I've just been listening to the whole set, like basically on repeat, this for the past day or two. So that's my music of the week, I guess. They recorded it over summer.
What is could you full disclosure, could you tell us what their Instagram, or is there any some sort of following that we could go through so that our listeners could follow them and know what they're doing?
Yeah, it's I think the Instagram handle is literally EH question mark, and then Capella is 2 P's and 2 L's. Okay, I gotta emphasize that. That's how acapella is freaking spelled. So it's CAPPELLA.
By the way, I've still struggled the pronunciation and the separation of A and Cappella. I never knew that they were two words.
Yeah. Well, now you know. Now you know.
So my music of the week for this week, finally, after 4 weeks of podcasting, I'm going to recommend classical work. It's actually a romantic work written by Richard Strauss. It's called Also Sprach Zarathustra. It's actually based on a poem. This is actually one of the first German work that I've ever played with an orchestra. It's an extremely difficult work, but this work actually most people know the beginning of it. It's a sunrise opening of the 2002. Is it the 2002 Odyssey or is it 2001? It's one of the years. Anyways, but that's the very famous beginning. But no one knows actually what comes after it, because what comes after it is even more amazing, especially the waltz section. It's actually absolutely a stunning piece. It's one piece that I would recommend a lot, and it actually follows a lot of the choral style, because Richard Strauss actually followed a lot of the style behind Richard Wagner, and a lot of work is all like 4-part writing, and he actually separates between each individual parts into 4 different parts. So imagine you have strings, you have 4 different parts for each different section. I mean, the way he writes them is just as chorale as it gets.
Wow, that sounds so profound.
It is a for well, before any listeners want to really dig into it, I would want to note, for a lot of classical works they are 30 minutes, and this piece is also similarly long. It'll be 30 minutes long.
Damn.
So that'll do it for the day. Thank you for listening to us, and listen and kind of carry on with this journey with us for this entire hour. We'll see you next week with another new topic. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Bye-bye.
We also want to thank Matt Klein for writing our awesome jingle for SUR ROUND SOUND. Thanks, Matt.